If you think about the financial services industry, we tell people to save all day long. And it's a good answer. Save, save, save. Problem is we don't tell people how to spend. Joy comes when I find purpose. And I think too many people don't find joy. They're constantly searching for happiness. And therefore, when they don't find joy because they don't have a purpose, they don't really enjoy life. You can develop new purpose. Now, for some people, that might be volunteering. For some people, it might be consulting. For some people, it could be writing a book. The next purpose is simply what other strengths do you have that you want to exploit?
Mastering the 360 mindset. While that may sound like a yoga class or a Six Sigma black belt certification, it is a serious approach to your financial life. It's the blueprint your host, Jon Meyer, wants to share with you. I'm Patrice Sikora. Jon, I have to admit the name does sound a little bit daunting, and we talked about it a little bit in your first episode, but please tell us more about the 360 mindset and where the concept came from.
Thank you, Patrice. When I think back to how we've built our company, we built it along the lines not of just one thing, but of many things side by side. So it started out as a CPA firm that then added wealth management, that then added a trust company, that then added other types of consulting. And so what you ended up with was a bunch of individual companies side by side that could service a client in so many ways. And what became apparent over time is that we can see problems from different angles because we have so many people with so much expertise. And I think over time that came back to me as we have to approach things from all these different angles to optimize people's short-term decision making, because the short-term decisions have long-term ramifications. And that's kind of where it came from. I have added to that a little bit in the past few years with this idea of intersecting health, wealth, and time, because I think there's a bit of other stuff going on besides those of us in the numbers game. I think when we talk about numbers, it's easy, but when we start talking about people's time and their health and behavior issues that kick in and sometimes prevent them from making good decisions, that's where I really get excited about trying to nudge people.
Tell me more about that, about people not making good decisions.
People basically feel stuck out of a couple of things. A, fear. But B, I think a lot of times people just need permission. Too many times we go along a path where we're told, do this, do this, do this. If you think about the financial services industry, we tell people to save all day long. And it's a good answer. Save, save, save. Problem is we don't tell people how to spend. And so when it comes to the idea of, okay, I saved a ton, but I don't know how to distribute that money now, all of a sudden it just locks people up. Fear might be the answer, but I think permission to spend is a big question for a lot of people. And so from our perspective, I'm always trying to get people to see things differently. Good example of that. I have a client who wanted to take a trip overseas, and their spouse is got an issue where they kind of have some problems with think of it as arthritis. And so they're going to take this big trip. And I said, great. I assume you're flying first class. And their answer is, well, no, we can't afford it. And I said, well, hang on a second. You've got millions of dollars. I think you can afford it. Let's talk about what's going to happen on the back end of the trip when you land. Because when you land, your spouse isn't going to be able to move sitting in economy. It just isn't happening. That's actually a bad thing for that person. And so now you spend the first 2 days of a 2-week trip basically just waiting for them to get unstuck. To me, that's not living comfortably when you can't afford to do something. After that conversation, they actually, interestingly, changed their flight to first class. And when they got back, they can't stop talking about that. And they are so thankful that, and they said it, like, you gave us permission to do something we never would have done. It's kind of weird because I don't want to make it sound like I have to be the guy that gives them permission. Like, they should do it to themselves. But at the same time, it seems like someone needs to nudge them.
That phrase, though, I can't afford it. Everybody uses it. I mean, that's what you grow up with. At least in my experience, that's what we did in the family. Well, it's not in the budget right now.
Yep.
So that's how I grew up. If it's not in the budget, then we can't do it.
It's a horrible phrase. You know, the one thing that I changed in the language of with my children real early on in my life was not to ever say we can't afford it, because we can afford it. My phrase was always, we choose to spend our money differently. Because when you teach people that there's choices, now they get the why behind it. If you don't explain the why, they get frustrated. But when I told my kids, we're not eating out every day, but when we travel overseas, we're going to stay in 4-star hotels and you can eat anything you want. To them, that was a good enough why. And so
Yes.
they didn't complain that we weren't eating out as much when their friends were eating out a lot. And I think that's the thing that people forget is we all have choices, but words matter. And we have to say it in a way, and we have to teach our kids and our grandkids this now, say it in a way that they understand that there are choices in life. Most of us have plenty of money. We should never use the phrase we don't have it, because our kids can see it.
Interesting concept. I like that. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, but I don't quite understand it, is living unbalanced. We were going to talk about the cost of living unbalanced. What does that mean?
Going along with what I just said, I think too many people don't enjoy life. I think there's this idea of, if you think about what we're all trying to do, everyone says, I just want to be happy. I would argue, I don't want to be happy. I want to find joy. Happiness is fleeting. Happiness is moments. I can be happy over eating a steak, but then that moment passes and now I'm not happy anymore. So joy comes when I find purpose. And I think too many people don't find joy. They're constantly searching for happiness. And therefore, when they don't find joy because they don't have a purpose, they don't really enjoy life. And I think that's what we see time and time and time again. And you would think as people get to retirement, for example, they say, oh, well, now I'm going to have time to do this, that, or the other thing. And the answer is maybe, but too many people spend so much time looking backwards at what they've accomplished instead of looking forward at what they're trying to do next. And that's the one thing where I really focus in on trying to get people to enjoy life is, let's find the purpose that brings joy. Let's discard the word happiness.
Joy is a word that we don't use enough.
No.
And joy, I agree with you wholeheartedly. People don't know what joy is, I think, most of the time. It's happiness. It's not the joy that is, it's a richer concept of happiness, for me anyway. But tying it to a purpose, how do you find the purpose?
That is a great question. So I don't know if anyone's read the book From Strength to Strength from Arthur Brooks. He talks a lot about this idea of finding purpose, where you went from one strength. A lot of us have this strength in work, and we develop our entire persona around work. And then we decide, okay, work's done, and we're going to go on to the next thing. And all of a sudden, we lost purpose. When we were working, it was work, but when we're not working, now what? You can develop new purpose. Now, for some people, that might be volunteering. For some people, it might be consulting. For some people, it could be writing a book. The next purpose is simply what other strengths do you have that you want to exploit that maybe you haven't had time to exploit? And I even look at my son. For a lot of years, he was a soccer player, and he thought, I'm going to go play soccer in college. And then he decided not to. That's cool. But he shifted his purpose then, because he still wants to stay in shape. He shifted his purpose from being a soccer player, a skinny soccer player, to this giant weightlifter, because he's still a physical specimen. And I watched that and I'm like, he found joy in a different way. Now he's not 170-pound soccer player. He's a 230-pound weightlifter. But it's still purpose. It's just driving him differently. And how do we go from strength to strength? I think that's a fabulous thought process to go through. And I think it's hard for most of us.
So is purpose tied to identity?
Oftentimes it is. Yes. I think for a lot of people it is. particularly when you look at work.
Yes.
A lot of people identify who they are with their work, and they don't realize the day they leave, the saddest person there is them. Everyone else just moves on. And I think it's interesting to look at it and say, in our world, we all think we have all these friends at work, but the reality is as soon as you leave, you find out that, most of them liked you, but that didn't really mean much. And for a lot of people, that kind of spirals them downwards. And so to me, purpose is something we got to constantly be searching for as a forward-looking thing instead of thinking backwards to who was I?
So it almost sounds to me like learning to embrace permission to enjoy life. The sooner you learn to do that, the better you are, or the more likely you are to find joy in your purpose and your identity.
Yeah, I do think so. Too many times we spend a lot of time not giving ourselves permission. And so I talked earlier about giving someone else permission, but sometimes you have to give yourself just the permission. And I find it just as hard as the next person. I'm not saying I'm perfect at this either. So I look at it as, how do I, if I know I want to head towards something, let's say my next strength is to, well, let's go back to my son, to become a bodybuilder of some sort. He's not a bodybuilder, but just to do something totally different like that. I have to put money into it, right? I have to buy gym memberships, and I have to probably eat different and get protein powders and whatever else I'm doing. Too many people don't take the step of giving themselves permission to spend the money to do that, so they never get there. And that's, to me, where I think we have the ability to say, things have to change. We have to do it different.
Do you talk to your clients like this?
I try to, yes, I do. And I tell them stories about me personally struggling with some of this too, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we're all struggling to figure it out, right? So why not just share where you are and what you're doing? I remember a great story where I was having an issue at the office with trying to figure out, it was nothing big, but it was trying to figure out how to assess people. And I looked around and I thought, I've got a client who has this exact expertise, but that client is, he's super busy. This guy's got a big title. But I thought, you know what? I'm just going to check. And he said, let's go out to breakfast and talk about it. So we went out to breakfast and talked, and he graciously gave me plenty of time. And I look at that and I'm thinking, that's the perfect example of what I want to be to clients too. Like, I never want to be too busy, and I never want to not share with them what I'm dealing with too, because I think I can always help someone, and in the process probably learn a lot more. So yeah, I do kind of talk this way with a lot of clients.
How do you start your first discussion with a client, your first introductory meeting?
If I just go back to what we all learned a long time ago, is people like you when you ask about them. And so quite honestly, I live by the 80-20 rule. I want to talk 20% of the time. I want to listen 80% of the time. And so for the most part, I just sit and ask them questions about themselves, what they're trying to accomplish, where things are at, what's failed, what am I missing here? Oftentimes, it's no different than we talk about AI nowadays, and everyone's like, oh, I did this in AI. If you go back and just ask the AI, what did I miss? You're actually going to get a better answer. And so that's the way I am with people too. In my meetings, I spend the last few minutes of every meeting just keep asking, what did I miss? What did I miss? What did I miss? And you'd be shocked what people come up with. I hear so many interesting stories where I learned something about, oh, I forgot to tell you, I got this problem with my child and I really don't want to leave him a lot of money. Or I forgot to tell you about this account I'm going to inherit. Or I forgot to tell you. And that stuff matters. So I think, to your question, I just am super curious, and I just love hearing people's stories. That's the one thing about this job that's fascinating, is I get to meet so many cool people. And when I say cool people, it doesn't mean they're flashy people. It means they're just average people, but they all have such an interesting story. And to me, that's the fun part.
All right. Well, then I'm going to throw it right back at you, Jon. What have I missed?
What have you missed? That's a really good question. You haven't missed much. I think, when you talk about all this stuff and you say, well, how do you talk to your clients and how do you do this? What you missed is, okay, Jon, what are you doing? What exactly do you do personally that is a little bit different? And I can't tell you everything I do because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'll tell you a couple of things that's interesting. Whenever I make decisions now, I've gone through life, to be fair, worrying about money a lot because I grew up from a household that was, it was middle class, but probably lower middle class. And we never had tons of money. So I always thought I got to have money. Today, I don't think that way anymore. And in fact, for the most part, what I do is I always look at the decision and I think, is this matter to my net worth? So for example, let's say my net worth were $100,000. I would look anything after that comma and say anything that's under $1,000 decision will not impact my net worth. So if it's going to cost me anything up to $1,000, I won't even think about it. I'll just do it. Now, let's say my net worth changed to $1 million. I'll look at that comma and I'll say, well, I'll go a step past that. So anything that's below $10,000, so anything from $9,999 or below, probably doesn't impact my net worth that much. So I can make those decisions. It allows me to move on faster. It allows me to make decisions faster. And it's usually not about buying stuff. It's about buying experiences. But it's just a little trick I learned over the years to get me myself, and I've shared this with a few clients, but to get myself past this idea of, oh my God, I got to hoard money.
Experiences, yeah. That's the big thing. Buying an experience.
Buying an experience is one of the biggest things I try to get people to understand, because at the end of the day, we all pass away. The one thing we have until we pass away is our thoughts. And then when we pass away, the people we left behind have those same thoughts. And so if you want something to go on for generations, it's the experiences. It's not the fact that you bought the boat. It's the fact that you spent 8 hours in the boat with your daughter, teaching her how to do a 360. If you could do those things, now the experience matters. It's not the boat.
Oh, Jon, that's beautiful. So if I haven't missed anything further, why don't you tell people how they can reach you?
Absolutely. You can reach me by going on our website at bgm360.com. You can catch my bio there, and there is a link if you want to schedule a meeting.
And be sure to like and follow this podcast. Please share it with others as well. Share it with friends and family. And thanks for being with us.